and welcome back to the channel. In today's review, we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Studio Series Voyager class Bonecrusher. As always, we're going to take a quick look at the packaging, and then we'll take a closer look at Bonecrusher himself. Starting off with the packaging, as with all of these Studio Series figures, we have a fantastic concept CG render of the Bonecrusher CG model from the movie Studio Series Bonecrusher Transformers. Other side of the packaging has another image of Bonecrusher. The back of the packaging showcases the figure in the robot mode, the vehicle mode, how many steps he transforms from, including a really awesome bio. Bonecrusher tackles Optimus Prime off a highway overpass, viciously thrashing at his enemy with his razor sharp claw. The other side of the packaging has a closer up image of Bonecrusher's head, Studio Series figure number 33, and that he is a Voyager class. Taking a look at the backdrop that Bonecrusher comes with, it is the highway that we saw Optimus Prime and Bonecrusher fight towards the end of the movie. It was a really awesome chase sequence and one of the best scenes in the first movie. Of course, you can insert Bonecrusher into the scene for a more dynamic display option, and you can also introduce Optimus Prime into the equation just to make the scene a lot more realistic. And here we have the figure out of package, and as he comes packaged in his robot mode. Now I must state straight away that personally I am fairly let down by this figure. Considering that this was a Voyager class, I was expecting a reasonably sized Voyager with a lot more accuracies when compared to the original deluxe version. What we do get is a very slightly larger figure than the previous deluxe, with a few different design choices to make the figure slightly more movie accurate. Taking a look at some of the details, the head sculpt has been recreated fantastically. As you can see, this is the very abstract looking design for Bonecrusher, and it has some really nice paint in the centre of the face as well as the red pupils to pick out some of the sharper details of the sculpt. As you can see, even on the top of the head, it's been painted to replicate some of the movie accuracies. The claw sections here are fairly inaccurate. In the movie they do spray open, but seeing as this is a Voyager figure, I'm willing to let that pass. When you turn the figure around to the back, as you can see, there's not much in terms of kibble. Everything does tidy away fairly nicely, and these sections here are great for making the figure more stable. Moving down to the torso section, there isn't much in terms of detail here. We have this ridge section, which is obviously supposed to replicate the grille of the vehicle mode. It's been picked out in a nice silver paint and definitely does look like it's supposed to. These sections here are quite obviously the windows of the vehicle. However, I can't help but notice that the paint actually, to me, looks as if that is a sticker. I do know that it is paint, but the paint just looks extremely cheap. Turning to the arms, they are quite spindly as we saw in the movie. But yet again, there doesn't seem to be that much in terms of detail. It does seem extremely basic. As you see here, there's no detail in this at all. It's very flush and very flat, unlike what we saw in the movie. These pieces here are fairly clunky. I would have liked it if they perhaps could have rotated these sections under here and collapsed this section down to make it flush with the hands. As you can see, the hands too are fairly simplistic in their design. They are just a 4-fingered claw, but that does look reasonably accurate to what we saw in the movie. Turning down to the torso section and the whole bottom section of the figure, they have managed to replicate the wheels in the correct places that we see them in the movie. As you can see, the faux tires do sit slightly higher than those two that we see at the front. The legs are fairly detailed and actually have the majority of the detail in them. As you can see, there is a fair amount of detail here with different grooves and ridges to make the sculpt look more interesting. But yet again, there isn't much in terms of paint. But Bonecrusher was never really the most vibrant of characters. However, considering that this character actually rolled for a truck on fire, I would have liked it if perhaps Hasbro had applied some singe effects, much like we saw on the battle damaged Megatron, just to make this figure look as if though it had been travelling through the flames. As you can see, they have managed to replicate his very abstract looking roller skates, which we saw in the movie. So overall, in terms of detail, it's decent and is fairly movie accurate to what we see in the film, but it's definitely nothing special. Now turning to the figure's articulation, it is fairly basic, to be honest. The head can just tilt left and right ever so slightly. It can't really look up nor down. It does twist very, very stiffly on a joint that spins the head around. I would have liked a more range of motion in this section to get him looking left and right and perhaps up and down. This claw section is on multiple hinges, so if you so choose, you can extend it all the way out and have a really big looking claw. These sections here can spray out as well, so you can make it look as if though it is clamping Optimus. So this is definitely a very articulated piece, which is handy considering that was the most predominant weapon we saw Bonecrusher use. The arms are on a series of joints, so here you've got a hinge joint that allows you to hinge them forwards and backwards. That's due to transformation though. These sections here can hinge up and down. There is also a hinge there as well. They are also able to move forwards and backwards. There is a swivel just above the elbow as well as a 90-degree bend at the elbow. This section here is actually able to come away from the arm, a tad more spindly like we saw in the movie. And finally, the claws can open and close. The legs are fairly articulated. Unfortunately, there is no waist articulation, which I was really hoping that they would incorporate, considering we definitely see Bonecrusher utilise a waist joint in the movie, and to get this figure into some more dynamic poses, that would have been fantastic. But nevertheless, the legs are able to kick forwards that far, as well as back that far. They can do the full split, which is great. There is a rotation at the thigh section, as well as a 90-degree bend at the knee. And a really surprising point of articulation that this figure has that isn't due to transformation is he actually has ankle rocker joints, so that you can get this figure in an even wider stand. So overall for articulation, despite it being fairly lacking in this whole torso section and some of the arm joints, the legs more than make up for this. For your Movie 1 Voyager class size comparison, here I have Bonecrusher next to the other Studio Series figures from the 07 movie, the Voyager class Brawl and the Voyager class Starscream. As you can see, both these Voyager class figures completely tower over Bonecrusher. In Starscream's case, he is actually wider than Bonecrusher as well as taller, so that is really one of my major drawbacks. Perhaps this is movie accurate, but for me, I really expected Bonecrusher to be a lot taller, or if not the exact same height as Starscream, and when compared to Brawl, I definitely thought that these two characters should have been within the same scale. With Bonecrusher now added to the line, I can finally say that we have the complete set of Decepticon sidekicks from the first movie. All we need now is a new updated 2007 Megatron, and there we have the completed Decepticons from the first live-action Transformers movie. For another size comparison, here is Bonecrusher next to the brand new Optimus Prime. Personally, this scale to me works a lot better than the scale between the Decepticons. I still think Bonecrusher should be a slight tad taller, but nonetheless, I still think that this is great, and we can finally recreate where Optimus takes his sword and stabs Bonecrusher through the head, completely decapitating him. Now, turning to the transformation, it is fairly simplistic. Personally, I would completely disregard the instructions and merely use them as a guide, as I found the instruction manual completely useless for this figure. It is a lot more complicated if you follow the instruction manual as opposed if you just figure it out yourself. To start off with, you're going to want to raise the arms upwards just like so, as well as taking these whole sections here and angling them down upon themselves just like this. So take this piece here, angle that down and line it up so that these pieces are flush along with each other. We can then take the arms here and proceed to raise those back up so that we create something that looks along the lines of this. What we can then do is take this whole section and swivel it around so that the windows are now facing the front of the figure, and proceed to rotate those all the way up, just like so. Turning to the leg sections now, we can take these pieces here and bring those to the front. This will then automatically make this heel face the front as well. So that is the result that you want. Take this and rotate that inwards just like this. What we can then do is disengage the entire waist section by taking this and just pulling it away so that you reveal this section. As you can see, it will slide out, and you want this section straight with this piece. We can then come to this piece here and lift this section up, as well as rotate these pieces outwards just like so. We can then take these sections here and rotate them in upon themselves just like so, and then take this whole section and rotate that out so that the black piece here is facing the same side as this faux tire. Repeat the same process on this opposite side and just bring them in so you have something that looks along the lines of this. What you'll then want to do is collapse this heel spur in towards the front. As you can see, that will then create this tab that will plug into this slot. So just take these two sections here and squidge them together just like this. With this section now near enough done, we can turn our attention to this piece. So pull this piece out just like so. These will create the front windscreen as well as part of the bonnet. Take that and you can proceed to lift those up and tab them into place. As you can see, there is a tab that plugs into a slot here, and then just pull those out just like so to allow for some extra clearance. We can then take this whole piece here and essentially completely detach it from that section, which will allow you to rotate this up. As you can see, the head will tuck into this cavity there. So rotate those up and proceed to plug the head in, and it will clip into place. And now more or less what you need to do is line up a few of the tabs. So as you can see on the underside here, we have some slots that will plug into these tabs here, as well as a tab here that will plug into that slot there. So just come to this top section first and get all this tabbed in. Take that section and slide that in, flip the figure around, and then take this and slide that in also, ensuring that this section here stays tabbed in also. Come here and squeeze this one in. Now these pieces here I found to be fairly difficult to actually get aligned properly. As you can see, I can get it done on this side. But there, give that a nice tab in and you will hopefully squeeze everything in as you're supposed to. We can then take this whole section here and proceed to rotate both the tyre and this piece up. And as you can see, there is a slot that will plug into this tab here. So just tap that in, come round and tab that in. We can then take this whole piece here and just tab that section into place. Now we're more or less near the end of the transformation. Take the hands and fold those down. Come to this section here and rotate these pieces up, and then rotate the claws backwards. Tab all this together. And now this whole cradle section to me is fairly complicated in how you're actually officially supposed to have it. Personally, I just collapse it in upon itself and have it resting along the back just like this. I'm not entirely sure whether that is accurate or not, but here we have Bonecrusher more or less in his completed vehicle form. Now surprisingly enough, for a fairly simple transformation, the vehicle mode is actually fairly accurate to what we see in the movie. As you can see here, I do have some slight misalignment. However, on this side it is a lot more flush, so perhaps I just need to give this a slight more tug. But here we basically have the vehicle mode, and there are some nice details such as the blue painted windows. As I stated, in the robot mode they don't look as nice as I think they could have done. They should have used a more glossy metallic blue as opposed to this almost matte type which looks more like a sticker in hand. The wheels have got all the hubcaps painted in that kind of sandy beige looking colour. Even the faux one too has been painted that way. There's some nice details such as the stairwell on the back as well as the side view mirrors. And if we lift this section out of the way, here we've got the grille, which unfortunately isn't actually painted. It would have been nice if they could have put some silver highlights in the indentations like we saw in the robot mode. As you can see, these silver nubs at the top have been painted as well. And there is some nice detail on the top. As you can see, there almost is this type of S shape for the transformation joint. I'm not entirely sure why they've gone with that as opposed to just having a complete straight line. But overall, it is a fairly nice looking truck. It does roll fairly smoothly as well. All the clearances seem to be pretty good on this one. And due to the amount of hinges this claw has, you can really get this in a variety of different poses. So you can reenact when Bonecrusher flips several vehicles on the highway chase scene. And for a quick size comparison, here is the new Studio Series Bonecrusher next to his wave mate, the brand new Studio Series Optimus Prime. As you can see, these figures are more or less the exact same length and height in terms of their vehicle mode. Optimus is slightly longer than Bonecrusher, however I do believe that is probably realistic to how it would be in real life. As you can see, the nose of Optimus's truck does just surpass this claw section of Bonecrusher. So personally, I think that these two are great in terms of a Voyager class scale. So there you have it. That is my review on the brand new Studio Series Voyager class Bonecrusher. As you could tell from my review, it is fairly a mediocre figure. It's definitely not leaps and bounds better than its predecessor deluxe class figure, but it is still a fairly nice upgrade, and for those who never picked up that original figure, this is definitely a really nice figure to start off with. I think the scale works reasonably well with his wave mate, the Optimus Prime. However, with the other Decepticons such as Brawl, I do wish that he was slightly taller. The transformation into the vehicle form is fairly simplistic and isn't too difficult once you get the hang of it, and the vehicle mode is fairly faithful to what we see in the movie, despite a few detail inaccuracies. Overall, I would recommend this figure, especially if you are collecting the Studio Series line. It is definitely nice to complete the 2007 Decepticon cast, and he is a fairly nice entry into the Studio Series line. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, please let me know down in the comment section below. And until my next review, which will most likely be the Optimus Prime review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.